the present, where most of the time the thing that we're spiraling over isn't an issue any longer. Okay, so let's dive into our belief system, because this is often where the real disconnect happens. So in real estate, we set our goals, right? Production goals, transaction, income goals, whatever our goals might be, but we rarely address the underlying beliefs that we hold on to that can either propel us forward to, toward hitting those goals or hold us back. So here's the thing. It doesn't matter what your goals are if you don't believe that you can reach them. So our belief system is composed of our subconscious thoughts, right? And, it's things that we may not even realize that are there that can limit us. So these beliefs that we hold deep down subconsciously, what happens is they surface as emotions, because emotions are the language of the subconscious. But the challenge is, when those emotions show up, especially the negative ones, what we typically do is we're like, I'm too busy for that. I'm on a listing appointment. I've got buyers to show houses to, right? We're at family events. We're running from one thing to the next. And so our emotions are our subconscious trying to tell us that something's important. And it's really important for us to address those subconscious beliefs, which actually we're going to do here in a minute, because they can truly affect whether or not we hit our goals in our business. So there is a universal truth in life that we don't get what we want. We get what we believe that we deserve. So many of us don't fully believe subconsciously that we deserve success, right? Not on that subconscious level. So it doesn't mean that we consciously think, I don't deserve success. That's not what happens. But deep down, we hold those limiting beliefs. We replay negative events over and over, right? Like bombing the listing presentation, right? We stay in the past, reliving those negative things, and those negative cycles can keep us stuck. And that's what can affect those subconscious limiting beliefs. And in real estate, one of the biggest killers of growth is it's called your comfort zone. Really, at the end of the day, it's just the comfort zone. It's wanting to stay in that comfort zone. And we've all probably heard stories of lottery winners, right? Ever heard of a lottery winner who goes broke within like a few months or, a year of winning the lottery? And what happens is their belief system hasn't caught up to their reality, right? They don't feel worthy of the money. So until they can, transfer those beliefs into their emotions and get that belief system part of who they are, they're going to feel like they're not worthy of that money. So sometimes that's what happens to those lottery winners. And the same things can happen in sales. So I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but being in real estate for so long, I've heard and known so many agents who have kind of the same year over and over again, right? They always hit that $100,000 mark, or the 20 deals a year, or the 50 deals a year, or whatever it is. They hit roughly the same mark year after year after year, no matter what the real estate market's doing. And it's because it's those subconscious beliefs. So subconsciously they go, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what I'm worthy of. And when you have a good month or a good quarter, subconsciously you can take your foot off the gas pedal because you're outside of your comfort zone. It's that comfort zone that's pulling you back and holding you back. So here's another universal truth in life, which is how you do anything is how you do everything. And that means that the things you tell yourself in one area of your life will affect every other area. So if you believe that, listings are hard to get, or you can only close a certain number of deals a year, those beliefs will spill over into your client conversations, into your lead gen, even how you show up on listing appointments. So the next step in this is, I think it's a fun exercise. I hope you think it's fun, but I love doing this. A little exercise to take just a minute and write down some of the beliefs or some of the thoughts that could hold you back from hitting your real estate goals. Now, I have done this with lots and lots of real estate agents over the years. And some of the common things that they've told me when I've asked them to write down, what are those beliefs? What are those thoughts that could hold you back from your goals? I tend to get the same ones over and over again. And number one is, I never get the good leads, right? So if that rings a bell with you, you get whether it's a call on your listing, or it could be, any real estate lead, a referral from your sphere, If they're not pre-approved, ready to buy tomorrow, it's like, oh, I never get the good leads, right? If I had $1 for everyone that said that. Because if they're not pre-approved, ready to buy tomorrow, that's kind of where our brain goes is, gosh, I never get those good leads, right? Why can't I just get a really good one? Another one is, I don't have enough time. I hear that from team leaders a lot. You know what, we're balancing all of our responsibilities and I have all of my team members and I have my family and I have all of these things. I don't have enough time, right? That's another common one. And probably the last one is, again, super common. All of my deals are hard, right? I always have difficult clients. If that's something that you've said, we've probably all thought it once or twice in our career. But if that's a repeating thought that you have, like, oh, why can't I just have an easy client, right? That's a subconscious belief that can be holding you back. So what I want you to do is write down some of those thoughts that you think that could hold you back from hitting those real estate goals. And the next step is to draw a line through those and then write the opposite underneath of them. But now here's the kicker, you guys. It's super important. You have to actually do this process and write it down on a piece of paper. And that's because when we write something down, our brain goes, oh my gosh, this is important, right? I have to remember it. I think it's the hippocampus that it activates. But you have to go through the process of actually writing it down on a piece of paper, drawing a line through it, writing the opposite underneath of it. Mentally, it will not give you the results that it will if you actually do this on paper. So draw your line and say, I'm thankful for every opportunity, or I have enough time for everything that I make a priority, or I am so thankful for my clients, right? Whatever it is, draw a line through it, write it down, write the opposite down, and take the time to do this process. Changing our internal dialogue around our beliefs is the first step to changing the emotions that we've attached to them. And when we change our beliefs, we actually start to shift our perspective. And over time, you'll see that those old beliefs, like I never get the good leads, right? I don't have enough time. We start to see that those were false and we form new beliefs that actually support our goals. And the key is to create new reference points for our brain to attach to, because the brain, it bonds to our emotions, right? And so we need to create powerful new emotions that support these new beliefs. So if you have, you wrote down, I want to take 5 new listings this month, right? Write it down and then feel the emotions. Like, what would it feel like to actually take 5 new listings this month? Really feel those emotions. And then that is a new reference point for your brain to attach to. So, okay. So next question to ask yourself is, what do I need to learn, practice, or get better at to achieve my goal? So if your goal is to double the number of listings that you take in 2025, ask yourself, what skills do I need? What do I need to get better at to achieve that? And maybe it's your listing presentation or, how you generate referrals, whatever it might be. So often we set a goal, like we have a great day in real estate. I'm going to double my business in 2025, and that's fantastic. But we show up as the same person with the same skill set and the same beliefs and the same thought emotion cycles and the same everything else, and we try to hit our goals, and that usually won't work. So think about, what do you need to learn? What do you need to practice or get better at to achieve your real estate goal? And then the last question, and probably the most important question to ask yourself around your real estate goal, is what would I need to believe about myself for that goal to be true? And this is where we start to uncover those subconscious beliefs that might be holding you back. So you've got your goal, you ask yourself, what I need to learn and do better at to achieve this goal. And then what would I have to believe about myself for this goal to be true? What I need to believe that I'm confident enough or organized enough or strong enough or whatever it might be, right? And so whenever you identify what you need to believe about yourself for that goal to be true, write a positive statement around that. For example, you might write, I am confident in my ability to lead my clients and double my business in 2025. Or maybe if you struggle with paperwork, like, some of us, so paperwork is not my favorite thing, right? Contracts, purchase agreements, listing contracts. But if you struggle with paperwork, maybe it's, I have the organizational skills to double my business in 2025. But what would you have to believe about yourself for those goals to be true? And when you start to change your belief system everything else falls into place. The thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, the actions that you'll take. Remember that expanded thought emotion cycle, right? It all starts to click in place and it starts to align with the goals that you've set. And that's when the true transformation happens, is when you're clicking away and everything is in alignment with the goals that you have in your real estate business. Okay, so let's talk about how to use emotional drivers to amplify your business. So personally, I love this part. It's probably my favorite part. So we have to start with the difference between goals and intentions, because this is where a lot of people can get stuck. So goals, those are the things that you're working toward in the future. But again, a lot of the time we approach those goals still being the same person that we are today, right? I'm the same person. I have the same habits. I have the same belief system. I have the same skill set. I have the same thought emotion cycle, right? But I'm working toward hitting their goals. And that's how most people try to hit their goals. They show up as the same person. And that's why a lot of times they'll fall short. So you're trying to create new results without changing who you are. Intentions, though, they're about who you're being right now, in the moment. So when you approach your goal with the mindset of being the confident, successful agent who believes that they can hit their goal right now, today, in this moment, you've already become mentally and emotionally the person that you need to be. At that point, it's not about becoming someone, it's just about doing the work. And it actually shortens the gap between you and the goal. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the be, do, have model, not the have, do, be model. But be, do, have means that show up as the person, right? Be the person who's already achieved whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, right? Show up as that person, their attitude, their skill set, their mindset. And then as you're doing the work, you're going to get the things that you want to get. But so many of us start with the opposite, right? They start with, I'm going to do the work, right? And then when I do the work, then I'll be the person that I need to be. It's actually the opposite. We have to show up as that person first. So every time that you work toward your goal, approach it from that positive statement that you just worked, right? Like there, you just wrote, like, I'm confident in my ability to lead my clients and double my business. Show up and read that before every listing appointment. Say that over and over again. Every buyer appointment. Say that positive statement and feel the emotions of that. Now, you have that statement that you just wrote, and I want you to read it twice a day. Once in the morning, as soon as you wake up in the morning, and then secondly, right before you go to sleep at night. And those 2 times of the day, our brain is in theta brain waves, right? Theta brain state. That's hard to say. Theta brain waves. So when we're in theta brain waves, our brain actually processes information that it sees and hears 6 times more effectively than we're in beta. So we're all in beta right now, unless you're sleeping, then you're not. But I'm in beta state. If you're watching this and actually listening, you're in beta state. And our brain doesn't process information as effectively when it's in beta as it does when it's in theta. So as soon as you wake up and right before you go to sleep, read that statement. Feel the emotions, of being that person, and you're literally training your brain to believe that you're already that agent. So when you feel the emotions of having achieved your goal, what happens in your brain is it releases some dopamine and some serotonin, right? So those are the neurochemicals associated with hitting our goals. So it releases those neurochemicals. If you share your goal with someone in your life, someone that you trust, you'll get some oxytocin in there. And so those 3 neurochemicals, those are the neurochemicals of goal achieving, because again, I don't care as much about setting goals. I care about achieving them, right? So I want to achieve them and use every ounce of everything that exists to help me achieve those goals. Okay, so you might be thinking right now, I know. Yeah, think positive, right? I've heard this before. But here's the thing. You can think positive all you want, but if you don't feel the emotions of that statement, those thoughts never make it deep into the brain, and our habits are run in the brainstem, right? So our brain, remember, codes our habits as survival mechanisms. So our survival is based in emotion, right? So if we ever thought that you might not survive something, you have high emotion attached to that, right? So survival is based in emotion, and emotion will always, always win over rationalizing and analyzing something, which is typically how people try to hit their goals, right? They go, oh, I should make some calls today, and I ought to call some of my past clients or my sphere today, right? So we typically will rationalize and analyze, hitting our goals, right? Should do, ought to, versus emotionalizing our goals. And actually, I love this study. So Harvard did a super interesting study where they taught two groups of people how to play the piano. So both groups went home and they practiced, right? So half of them practiced on a real piano, right? Playing the keys just like they learned. The other half simply visualized playing the piano. So they didn't have a real piano. They just closed their eyes. They saw themselves playing the piano just like they learned. And at the end of the study, they brought both groups back. And what they found was hardly any difference between the two groups and what they retained, how much better they got. And that's because the brain literally can't tell the difference between something real and something vividly imagined. So this is the same principle at work when you emotionalize your goals. Your brain actually takes ownership of that goal. And when your brain believes that it owns something, it tries desperately to hold on to it. It's actually called the endowment effect. So when you emotionalize your goals, your brain goes, oh, that's mine, and I need to hold on to it. So it will do anything and everything it can to hold on to that goal. So super, super cool study that they did with chocolate bars and coffee mugs to prove the endowment effect, that we can use that in helping us to hit our goals. All right, so let's talk about turning our goals into habits. So habits and goals are stored in different parts of the brain. So our goals are stored up here in the frontal lobe, and then the habits are stored back here in the brainstem. And your brain has these little neural messengers called endocannabinoids. And what their job is to convert goals into habits. Super, super cool. But we have to help them. They can't do it on their own. So to help those endocannabinoids, what we have to do is we have to stay consistent. So the first way to turn those goals into habits is to work toward your goal every single day, even when you don't feel like it. So I don't know if you go to the gym, right? If you've gotten in the habit of going to the gym at 7 a.m. Monday through Friday, whatever it is, you just automatically get up and you go to the gym because it became a habit, right? It started out as a goal and then became a habit. And so we have to turn that same thing, into our real estate goals. So if your goal is to call 100 people in your sphere of influence, set aside a specific time every day, like 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., whatever it is, for making those calls. And the more regular the behavior, the easier it is for your brain to turn that action into a habit. And remember, habits are survival to our brain, right? So once your brain codes something as a habit, it's just automatic. So now, if you find yourself struggling to stay consistent or maybe giving up, change up your surroundings, right? Change up your environment. So if you always sit in the same chair to make your prospecting calls, but you never quite get through your goal, right? Sit in a different chair, go into a different room. This is something that I used to do actually. So if I was prospecting, I would always want a snack, right? I'm like, oh, this would be so much better if I had a snack. So I'm just going to get up, 10 minutes into my phone calls and go downstairs and get a snack. So what I started doing is locking my office door. So that was my, that was my pattern interrupt to stop. Don't get your snack, Susan. Sit back down and finish your calls, and then you can have your snack. But my pattern interrupt was having to unlock that door. It's a physical sensation to break that. Again, you can use it for a thought or a behavior pattern. And then lastly, is small wins are the same thing as big wins. So start with small, achievable goals. Each time you check off a goal, your brain gets that little rush of dopamine, right? And it motivates you to keep going. So if you want to call like 20 past clients, but you never seem to get to those 20 calls, start with a mad minute. I used to do this all the time. So a mad minute is I'm going to make 1 minute of phone calls, like as many as I can make. And honestly, a lot of times I was rooting for voicemail, so I could get as many calls as I could in my mad minute. But once you get your minute, you're like, well, that was easy. So now I'm going to do 2 minutes, and I'm going to do 5. And then before you know it, you've hit your goal of 20, past client calls. So start with a mad minute, start with a smaller goal, and then work your way up to those bigger goals. Okay, so emotionalizing your intentions, by doing that and reinforcing them with small, consistent actions, you actually can transform how you approach your real estate goals. And when you combine the power of your emotions with the right habits, you move from goal setting to goal achieving, right? And so the last thing that we're going to talk about today are what I call RCFs, which are roadblocks, considerations, and fears. And these, you guys, these are the things that absolutely will happen on the way to achieving our goals. 100%. We're going to run into at least one of these. So we're going to run into roadblocks that stop us. We're going to have to take things into consideration. And sometimes it's fear that's going to stop us. So what we're going to do is we're going to prepare for them in advance. So preparing for your RCFs in advance is like planning your next football game or soccer game or basketball game, right? You watch like tape of your opponent, right? I'm not a sports person, but I think that's what it's called. You watch tape of your opponent, right? And you plan what you're going to do to stop their offense or block the extra point. So when it happens in the game, you already know what to do, right? It's no longer a factor in the outcome, right? So roadblocks, those are the things that will otherwise stop us from hitting our goal. So I just moved here. I don't have a sphere of influence. I don't have a listing presentation. When you identify a roadblock, I want you to find 3 ways around it. Not 1, not 2. I want you to find 3. So if you don't have a sphere of influence, one way around it might be to join a club or a knitting group. A second way around it might be to hold open houses every weekend for 90 days. A third way around it might be to start or join a networking group. So find 3 ways around your roadblocks so they don't stop you. Considerations, those are the things that you'll have to consider, right? So maybe it's my significant other may not like it if I have to work more evenings and weekends on my way to hitting my goal, right? So you're going to have to take into consideration, is your goal important enough for you to keep going, right? To push past and persist. How can you get that person on board? Can you set a family reward when you hit your goal to go do something fun, right? And then lastly, fears, those are the things that are most likely going to stop us. And it's things like, can I do it? What if they say no? Or what if they say yes? Because many times we're more afraid of the yes than we are of the no. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. In 2009, I took over as managing broker of this tiny little office. I had 12 agents the day I started, 12. And a big part of my job was recruiting experienced agents. And I hated it. I hated everything about it. So I didn't do it. So I didn't make the calls. I put the last thing on my to-do list. Weirdly enough, it never got done. So I finally said, okay, I really actually love my job and I have to grow this. I have to grow this office. So I took out a piece of paper and I wrote, what do I hate about recruiting agents? And then I wrote the answer, picking up the phone. Okay, why does that scare me? I wrote that down. They might answer is what I wrote, right? And then, okay, why does that scare me? Well, they might want to talk to me. Okay, and I wrote then, what scares me about that? They might agree to meet with me. Okay, what scares me about that? I went through it's like 6 or 7 questions, right? What scares me? What scares me? All right, what scares me if they want to meet with me? And I wrote the answer, which was they might want to come to work for me. Oh, that was unexpected. So all that time, I thought that I hated recruiting agents because I was afraid of the no. I thought I was afraid of rejection. It turns out that was not it at all. I was afraid of the yes. I was afraid they would say, you know what, Susan, I think you're right. I think you can help me grow my business, so I'm going to come to work for you. And what if I couldn't? What if I wasn't good enough, right? That was my fear, that someone would actually say yes to my recruiting calls. So when I knew what my actual fear was, I just simply wrote down everything that I did for my agents that I knew that no one else did. 1 page of everything. And I knew that if they didn't grow their business and they came to work for me, it was because they didn't tap into the things that I was offering them. It wasn't on me anymore. And so that was enough for me to grow that little 12-person office to 78 agents, move it to the number 20 office in the country, number 1 market share with less than half the agents of any of our competitors. And I went on to run a 350 agent brokerage as VP of sales. And here I am at eXp. So do the exercise. Trust me, it just might change your life like it changed mine. So now that you have the tools, the key question is, will you use them? Knowing about them will not make a difference in your business. but using them and experiencing them in your business can be life-changing. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you for hanging out with me today. You're all amazing, and here's to hitting all of your goals in 2025.